wait?
I'll pause it.
Okay. How that will give you repeat business. Those of you, I think, all know me. I'm Lisa Sullivan, your DB. And Nancy Colvin, our managing broker, is joining me as well. She's going to be contributing to this. And one of the ways I always teach is interactive. We're going to talk about some things. We're going to ask for feedback. I always want your input. And everything is open for negotiation and discussion in the classes that I teach. So I want you to feel free to speak up and interject if you have something that is of value to add to the class. When you think about gaining trust, what are some of the things that you think about? What I think about most is communication. I think that it is key to communicate clearly with your clients and set those expectations up front. Ask them their preferred method of communication. Ask them the title that they prefer to be called. Some people want to be more formal, some want to be more informal. And if you don't ask that question, you will not know the answer. Ask them if if their preferred method is email, is it text, is it phone, is it some other method that or combination of all of the above. Ask them how often they'd like to be spoken with or communicated with. These are things that you can do at the very beginning, at your very first consultation, that can set up the success or failure of your transaction. You can be a terrible agent and a great communicator and not get a complaint. By the same standards, you can be a fantastic agent and fail to communicate, and those are the calls that we get as brokers. Does anybody have anything to add to that so far?
You hit the nail on the head.
I really do think that, I've learned over the years that I failed at different times to communicate clearly with clients, and that's why I've learned now to ask the questions that I ask. When I was a brand new agent, I had a young couple as buyers, and I treated them like peers. I was in my 30s. I thought that is what they wanted. She wanted me to call her Dr. Bailey. She'd just earned her PhD, and she was very, very proud of that. And she wanted that respect and that recognition. And I never asked her how she wanted, what she'd like to be called. And I just called her by her first name. That was a hard lesson to learn. About halfway through the transaction, she spoke up and said that she preferred to be called Dr. Bailey. It changed our tone of our interaction from that point on, and I've never made that mistake since. I don't ever assume that people want to be called some certain thing or how they'd like to be addressed. I always ask them. And I don't care if they're younger than me, they're older than me, I ask them. I call them Ms. or Mr. or ask them what they'd like to be called at our very first interaction. I think that'll stand you in good stead. It'll just set the tone for your relationship and allow them to know that you are a professional and that you care about what they think. The next thing is, it leads right into respect. Make sure that you respect your clients and other agents, other people that you're interacting with, title officers, escrow officers, lenders, inspectors, everybody that you interact with in a transaction, treat them with the utmost respect. Assume that they're professionals unless they prove otherwise, and then you deal with that in a separate way. But treat everyone with equal respect. I don't know how many times in my life I've been treated with disrespect because of my appearance or different things like that. Going in to buy a car, same thing with an open house. If somebody comes in jeans and a dirty t-shirt, make sure you treat them with the same respect as you treat someone who came in a business suit. You have no idea what their background is or how they ended up there that day, and you need to make sure that you treat everybody the same. Admit your errors. If you make a mistake, admit it immediately. Never hesitate to give bad news. Bad news, the more quickly it's dispersed to your clients or your peers, is going to go over much easier than if you hold it in. One of the complaints that Nancy and I get quite often is something that had happened, something bad, but the agent was afraid to tell the clients about that. It festers, it gets worse, and then by the time it gets to us, it's almost impossible to correct in a good fashion. They are angry, they're distrustful, they think the entire brokerage and every agent is out to get them. So again, if there's a bad news, address it up front, address it honestly, and it'll go a lot smoother for you. Anybody else would like to add at this point?
Say, do what you say you're going to do. That kind of ties into what you were just talking about. If you say you're going to do something, make sure you get it done.
Exactly, exactly. And one of the things we're going to get into later is the Pathways to Professionalism handout from NAR. And one of the things, the first thing on there is golden rule, and it applies to our business every single day. Treat others as you'd like to be treated. I mean, that's a very simplification of it, but yeah, that's it, exactly it. Another thing is always stand up for your beliefs. I'm not talking political or religious, I'm talking about ethics. If you are in a conversation with a client and they're trying to badger you or bully you to do something that you know is wrong, stand up for your beliefs. Do not back down. You can set the tone right up front with clients and customers. If they know that you're a professional, they're going to back off a little bit. We get that quite often. You get, especially in this market, when it's sellers think that their rules are above all else. You need to stand up for your principles. You need to make sure you address things head on, and don't do things that are sketchy or questionable just to get a sale. It is absolutely not worth it. And again, Nancy and I, those are complaints that we get quite often. Agents are doing anything to get business, and they're letting clients run over them, and it's just not acceptable. And if you stand up early when you meet a client and you say, these are my boundaries, I will not break through these boundaries, they're going to respect that, and they may push you. That's okay. It's okay to have some push, some give and take, but don't cross that line. Always make sure that you stand up for what you believe. Also, speak up. If you hear or see something that you don't like, speak up. If a client starts saying something that is misogynistic, bigotry, racist, speak up immediately. You have the right to fire that client. You do not have to work with anybody that you don't want to, or that you feel is unsafe or unprofessional. And if you are uncomfortable having that conversation, reach out to one of the brokers and we'll have it for you. But we do not condone that kind of behavior at all, and you need to speak up. Same token, if you're with a seller, you're walking through the home and you notice termite tubes, or you notice a ceiling leak, and you ask them about that, and they say, oh yeah, we're not going to really talk about that. Speak up. You need to make sure that you let them know that if they don't disclose it, you will, and that it's their legal responsibility to disclose any material defects known, and that if they don't, you will. So again, communication is key in this business, and having a backbone is important in this business as well. It's not always easy and it's not always fun, but if you can go to sleep at night knowing you did the right thing, it's going to make it a lot better in the long run. Anything else you'd like to add to that part, Nancy? I know you deal with this as well on a daily basis.
Yeah, one of the things, and this is kind of going back to the respect issue that you were talking about. One of the things that I hear quite often is sometimes there's a lack of respect for our peers as well, like other real estate professionals. And in this market, it's real easy for agents to get their feelings hurt or feel that their client got shorted if they didn't get at least a counter offer if they're representing a buyer or something. And it's also when there are certain agents who tend to come off a little strong and almost like they're bullying their way through things. And so having that real good communication with agents when you're in the transaction and treating them with respect, always answering them when they send an offer, at least let them know, hey, we accepted a better offer. Don't just leave it on the table and not communicate. So communication and respect, I was just going to throw that in there, and it's probably not the right place, but
there's no wrong or right place for this. This is, like I said, it's open, and we want to talk about all the issues. Another thing is know your area of expertise. Don't answer a title or escrow question without reaching out to your escrow or title officer. Refer them, be the source of the source, not the source. So that if you don't know the answer, it's okay to ask them, say, I don't know that, but I'll find out for you. Get the correct information, make sure that you direct them to the right individual. The other thing is financing. Right now, you need to know about the different types of financing available. You need to know that if they are using a VA loan, they might be at a disadvantage in this market, and you need to have that conversation up front with them, that they may even consider a different type of financing in order to make their offer stronger, things like that. So you need to be aware of all the market situations that apply and keep current on that so that you can best serve your clients. But never tell them what type of financing to use. Just always let them know that there could be an issue with it in the market. You touched on this, Nancy, but never disparage other clients or agents. That's so critical. When you're interacting with another agent, you may have some fighting or some kind of disagreement between the two of you. Never let your client know about that. That is the surest way to lose their respect. You don't want them thinking the other party is an adversarial party. So you need to keep that internal and just present them with the absolute facts and the numbers and do your job. That's our job to handle that. It's not your client's job to handle that. And I think that is one of another main complaint that we get. They said, well, the agent on the other side was so unprofessional. And I'm thinking, how would they know that unless our agent expressed that to the client? And so I think that's really important not to do that. Let's see. Again, in our world right now, it's very important not to express your political or your religious viewpoints. I think that's a certain way to damage a transaction with either clients or other agents. Nobody cares about your opinion. They may say they do, but they really don't. They only care about their opinion. And I think you just need to be the neutral third party there, take care of their business, but don't worry about their political affiliations or whether or not they agree with you. Anything you'd like to add to that? Anybody? Larry, you always have something good to say. You're muted.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. What was it? I had a delay here. So part of your question I didn't catch.
No, there's no question. I just wanted to see if you wanted to add anything. I always value your insight on client interactions and things like that.
I mean, truly just always treating everybody just as, with total respect. I mean, it's exactly what you said. It will get you further down the road. Especially, I always enjoy talking with the other agent in anything that I'm approaching, or if there's an agent bringing a buyer or something like that. Always just having that upfront conversation. Hi, how are you? Hey, what do we got? Hey, this. Just a really upbeat conversation that kind of sets the table for how the rest of everything is going to go through the whole transaction. And you can ask a few of those questions. What's your favorite? Just even with the agents, what's your favorite way of communication? We always talk about that with our contacts. You can do the same with the agents. Do you prefer text, phone call? What time of evening are you up around till? That kind of thing. So it's always just being very open, very upfront, but very respectful at all levels. And when I've gotten into some situations where it sounds like it's going to become confrontational, I just turn the conversation into something. Well, we've run into this a couple times before, or I've run into this situation a couple times before, so let's talk about it. And just being at that level, as opposed to taking like a wait a minute, what are you talking about attitude. Yeah. And again, problems are going to come up. That's the biggest thing that I've always said to everybody. Hope for the best, but expect the worst, hope for the best. And expect things to go completely sideways. Just this morning, I get a text message from a client that's a $500,000 buyer. They're all over this house. They looked at the pictures and went, "Wow, that house looks completely different than what we thought from the inside. We want to go see this house." Well, the HOA doesn't let them park their cars in the driveway. It's a 3-car garage. These folks have 5 cars.
Not going to work.
It's not going to work. Oh well, move on. Yeah, it's not like, oh my God, what, or isn't there a way we can talk to the HOA about changing it? It's just not possible. So it's just, you have to understand that things are going to come down the line, expect them to, and therefore when they happen, it's a challenge each and every time to say, how do we work through this? How do we build a bridge? Or this is just not going to work. Let's move on to the next thing.
Well, that goes back to knowledge of your product. You knew the neighborhood, you knew the HOA information. You displayed it professionally to your client, and it's not a matter of debate at that point. It's not going to work for you, and this is why I didn't show it to you. Yeah,
that kind of thing. In this case, the client actually was talking to a relative who had lived in that area before, in that little cul-de-sac. They had lived there like 8, 9 years ago, and they're like, oh yeah, they don't let you park your cars in the driveway. 3-car garage, 5 cars. I even said to the client, well, is there a chance you can downsize? Downsize the number of cars? And he comes back and he goes, LOL, I don't know what downsize means.
Exactly.
But he was very, he's understanding about it and things like that. I do want to say one other thing real quick, or a short story. And especially on that, don't judge a book by its cover when people walk into an open house and things like that. Here's my short story on that. And it's kind of outside of real estate, but it makes the point. A gentleman in dirty overalls and like boots was in Tucson Mall, went into a jewelry shop with his wife and started looking around, and he had clearly just come off the farm and working for whatever reason, didn't change clothes or whatever. So here he is in this jewelry store, and he's looking at the rings and things for his wife, and they pick out a rather expensive item that they want to look at, and the lady behind the counter said, I'm sorry, I don't think you could afford that.
Wow.
So he kind of laughed it off, knowing who he was. And I guess they kept looking, and that attitude was still coming there from there. And they got the manager, and the manager, the gentleman says, would you, and he took it, he took this, but he said, would you call the bank, please? So he calls the bank, they call the bank, and the bank basically says, he can buy your store.
Right.
The lady told the manager, we literally use his money to lend out to cover payroll on Fridays when we come short. He can buy anything in the store and probably can buy your store. So that was a great story that I had heard, and it just makes the point. Somebody that looks like they just got off of a park bench and haven't had a shower in 3 days could be somebody that's just walking with a pocket full of money.
Right. And it doesn't matter. Right.
And it doesn't matter. You treat everybody like the way that you would want to be treated. The golden rule, like you mentioned earlier. So enough of that.
No, I think that's one of the very most important lessons that we can learn as agents, is not to prejudge, not to assume, not to, everybody's finances are different. They could be, 18 years old and have a trust fund or have been very successful in business already. You can't judge them. By the same token, they can walk in with a nice suit, drive a nice car, and be totally broke. I mean, you just can't make that assumption. That's why pre-approval letter is so important. That is why just being kind and considerate. You'll find out a lot if you listen instead of talk. And I think that is one of the most important things that we can learn as agents, is not to talk over our clients. And if they're sitting there with a little dog in their lap, find out that dog's name. If they mention their children, find out their children's name. Find out what's important to them and utilize that when you talk to them. They will remember you if you remember them. That is and forever. One of my best clients I met at an open house, which I don't do a lot of open houses, I never did. She's done 25 deals with me over the last 25 years with referrals or herself and her family. Because she walked into an open house and she didn't look very nice. Let me put it that way. She was messy. She looked like she was homeless. She had just cleaned her garage and lived down the street, but you would never know that. We struck up a conversation, and she not only bought the open house, I listed her house, her sister bought a house, and her ex-husband, they were getting divorced, bought a house. That was just the beginning. That was within a 3-month period, and it's gone on from there. And one of the things she said to me is, you just treated me like I looked like I was normal. And she goes, I was kind of embarrassed to even go in there. And I thought, you know what? I don't care. I don't care what you look like. So that was a lesson I learned early as well, is just don't judge them. And it's hard. It is hard not to sometimes. We're all human. So another thing, we're talking about gaining trust. You can gain trust in so many different ways. We've talked about communication, respect, admitting your fault, standing up for your belief system, financing, not disparaging other clients or contacts. What else can you add to that? What else? What are we missing?
One of the things that I wanted to bring up, you had mentioned about being careful expressing your opinion, your views, that type of thing. You don't want to offend other people. Most people don't care about other people's opinion. They care about their own. This is true. And when we want to, since we are professionals and we want to be viewed as a professional, the only way we will be viewed that way is if we act as a professional. And we are sort of held to a higher standard because we promote ourselves as professionals. So it can be very damaging to relationships with clients or relationships with peers if we take our expressions and go on a rant, for example, on Facebook, or if we start posting inappropriate things. It's amazing how quickly that can all come back to you and can hurt. You can hurt other people without even intending. So as a professional, that's one of the things that I've gotten some calls on is inappropriate posting, and clients don't like it. Your peers don't like it, you know, so we have to think really hard before we send that post. And sometimes we need to think for a while before we, you know, when we're typing something out, even returning an email, for example. And this goes into the communication thing. If you are upset with something and you're responding to an email, you might want to wait a little while before you hit that send button and give it some thought. So just a couple of things that were running through my head as you were talking about all this stuff. So anyway.
I think those are fantastic. One of the things I do want to touch on is advertising. That Nancy is exactly correct on that. Right now, I'm not sure why people think that they can just free think and spill it all out on in the public, especially on a site that references your job. Be really cautious about that. If you're going to do real estate advertising, or you're going to express your opinions, you may want to have a separate page from your business page. And just remember, those are going to be interlinked at some point. People are going to find out who you are, where you are, and we are going to hear about that as your brokers. And it could affect your business. So just be cautious about that. Be professional. The other thing is, when you're writing an email to somebody or following up with something via text or something, be professional at the beginning. I received an email from somebody that I didn't know the other day as the broker, as the DB, not as just as me as a human. And it said, "Hey, Lisa, so what do you think about this problem?" And I'm thinking, who is writing this? It was another broker. And I thought it was odd that their tone was so flippant about that. And again, so be cautious how you speak when you're writing to other people. The way you may think it sounds friendly, but in that case, it kind of was like off-putting a little bit. So just be cautious about that. And I don't, the people on this call are so funny. The ones that are on this class are not the problem. See, none of you that I see on the screen are ever a problem. So thank you very, very much for that. And I appreciate you trying to continue to increase your professionalism, because that will make you just even more outstanding than you all already are. So I'm sure appreciate that. Let's see, what else? I don't know in the chat, I don't know if Kayla was able to put the pathways to professionalism in the chat. I'm sure most of you have seen that already. And
the Word doc is in the chat. If you guys need it as a PDF, just let me know and I can send it as well.
That would be great if you could do that. How many of you actually have read the Pathways to Professionalism put out by NER? All right.
I think it was handed out once before some time ago, but it's always good to get another copy.
Yeah.
Kayla, I'm not seeing it in the chat. Of course, I had an internet glitch, and maybe it was sent when I was disconnected.
I don't see it either.
Yeah, there's nothing in the chat right now, so maybe it was sent before we started. Yeah. So when the pathways to professionalism, there's three parts to it. There's the respect for the public, respect for property, and respect for peers. And all of those are tie right in with what we're talking about. We don't need, like, again, this group of people are not the ones that we need to be talking about this with, but it never hurts to have a little bit of a refresher. And again, the very first thing in the respect for public is the golden rule. Follow the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Again, no one on this call violates that. We all follow that to the utmost ability. The number 2 is respond promptly to inquiries and requests for information. You all do that as well. But that's important. I know we touched on that earlier, is the response time. Even if you cannot get a response from a seller or a buyer relay that information to the other party. You know what it's like when you're waiting. It seems like forever. Every minute seems like an hour. Every hour seems like a day. Put yourselves in your client's position, and think. Make sure that you're giving feedback, even if you don't have an answer. That's okay to say that I don't have an answer yet, but I'm following up on it. That is critical. And if your client does reject an offer and they won't sign, that's okay if they don't sign it. Just make sure that you relay the information to your client. Let them know that that they did reject that offer, and you just at that point you need to let it go. It's done. Also, no response is a response. So if the time for acceptance has passed, you're done. Technically, the buyer has the right to move on. You cannot badger a seller into doing anything after that, or even to responding to you. So just let it go, move on, and let your clients know up front that that may happen, especially in this market right now. And again, if somebody sends something over after the time has elapsed, you do not have to accept that. It's not a valid offer. It can only be ratified with an addendum extending that acceptance time. So make sure that your clients know as well that they do not have the ultimate authority to break the timeline on that. When you're setting appointments, one of the things that that I've noticed over the last couple of years, especially, is the agents are not courteous when it comes to setting appointments or respecting the key safe rules. Please make sure that you call, if you set a time that you show up when you say you're going to show up. If you use showing time, that you show up when you say you're going to show up. Don't show up without calling and just walk into a property. I lost a listing a few months ago because of that. A client walked in 3 in a row, walked in without calling, and the client just said, I'm done. I'm not going to do this anymore. So make sure you communicate clearly about that. I know Jody, I see Jody just hopped on, welcome. I know that we've, in the past, you drive up to a property and your client says, that is awful. I don't even want it. It doesn't look anything like the pictures. I don't want to see it. You've set an appointment. Have a courtesy call. Courtesy call that either that agent or that seller and let them know you're not going to enter that property so they can go on with their lives. Especially with COVID, a lot of people don't want to be in the home when you're showing it. And I prefer they're not in there anyway. They can go home then, or they can get back to whatever they wanted to do. So make sure you communicate clearly. Again, timeliness is important. Make sure you communicate in a timely fashion. If you say you're going to call at 8 o'clock, then you call them at 8 o'clock, not 8:05, not 8:30. If you can't call for some reason, then make sure they know ahead of time that you're going to need to reschedule. But again, if you say you're going to do something, you have to do it. Otherwise, it just kills that professionalism. Anything anybody'd like to add so far to what we're talking about? Hi, Teresa. What can I say?
Hi, I have a funny story to tag along with what you just said about showing up at a home and the client says, oh my goodness, I don't even want to look. That actually happened to my brother when he was looking for homes here in Tucson a few years back. He had an agent and wasn't Keller Williams agent, but the guy said, and he did buy a home with a Keller Williams agent after this, but he pulls up and my brother's like, oh, same thing. Oh, I don't even want to go in that place. He's like, well, we have to because the owner is expecting us in. So this guy drags my brother through this home. The owner is still in there. And he felt very awkward. And after that, he told the agent, I'm tired of being drug around to places I don't want to see. And just listening, to our clients, so what their needs are and not forcing them to go look at something they don't have any interest in. So
Exactly.
It was just funny. It just reminded me of that.
Good story. One of the things too, that sometimes if you pull up to the front of a house or something and it may not look like what they think it looks like, but their hot buttons were the yard and the kitchen, you may remind them of that the reason you are at this home is because of these other features, and it may behoove them to go ahead and go and take a look. You can sometimes update cosmetic things, or you can change landscaping or paint, but if the floor plan was what they wanted and the layout is what they wanted, it may be worth seeing it anyway. And they don't have to stay long. The other thing now is be very, very conscious that of the fact that there are probably cameras and recording devices in your home, in the homes that you're in. They're going to hear you at the Ring doorbell if you're talking outside. They're probably tracking you inside. Make sure that you address this with your clients before you show up at a property. To be cautious of what they say, be cautious of what they touch. just be extra respectful, and that they can write notes, or you guys can communicate and then talk about it when you're off site, completely away from the property. Otherwise, they may be giving up their advantage, their position to the other party. I did that once as well. I didn't, when Ring doorbells first came out, I did not realize that they can hear everything that you say in the yard. And we were negotiating price and terms in the yard in front of the home. And the seller already knew all that by the time we presented the offer. And so that put my client at a disadvantage. We did end up getting it, but we may have been able to get it for less if they didn't know our bottom line.
That is so true, Lisa. Cameras are everywhere, and it's been like that for a few years now, but we still have the tendency to forget. So thank you for remembering to bring that up.
Yeah, and it's a tough one because we take them for granted now. We don't even notice they're there, but they are. Yeah. And yeah, you just need to be aware of that. Again, when entering a property, make sure you follow the showing instructions. Make sure that if there are pets, if there are specific requirements, it's not up to us to agree with those requirements. It's just we don't have to show it if we don't agree with it, or our clients don't agree with it. But we do have to abide by whatever those rules are. They may have very specific things that they want you to do when you enter a property. Booties are also, used to be a big thing where agents they refused to put booties on. It's not your choice. If a client requests that you put booties on when you enter property, then you do it. Or if you take your shoes off, in some cultures, you need to take your shoes off when you enter a home. It's a sign of respect. You need to do that if that is a requirement. Same thing with lights or window shades or things like that. If they're left if they want you to leave them in a certain way, then you make sure that you leave them in the same way that you found them. One of the things that's a hot button a lot of times is the garage, locking the door between the garage and the home. I don't know how many times I've had clients call me furious that someone locked that door. Well, as an agent, I'm taught to lock up that property, and I'm going to lock it up unless I know for sure that it was unlocked. And even then, I'm going to pick up the phone and call the other agent and say, do you want this door unlocked, or would you like me to lock it? So take that extra step. If your clients want that door unlocked, then make sure you put a sticker on that door that says, please do not lock this door, and let your client know it probably get locked anyway. So be prepared for that. It just, little things like that can make a big difference when you go to write your offer. If you show the property with courtesy, that seller is going to remember, and so is that agent. If you make a mistake and you bungle something up before you've even presented an offer, that is going to set the tone for the transaction.
Listing appointments, I always educate the seller to always have a key for the door between the garage and the house.
Yes.
After my first year in real estate, when I got called at 12:30 in the morning and in the rain and asked to get the key out of the key box because somebody had locked that door and they couldn't get back into their own house. And then, of course, that key box was on timed entry. So then I had to go back home and get into Supra and untime the entry of that box, then go back over there. So by about 2 a.m., I got them into their home. So now I always remind my sellers to have a key to get back into their own house.
And tying into the key issue, I always tell the client, I'm going to make a copy of the key for myself. I'm going to put one in the box. I'm going to keep one in a safe location at my office, because if a key gets misplaced, or I had one get dropped into a grate system that was by the front door. They had a drainage system. What are you going to do at that point? I'm not going to tear the grating system up. And the agent called me and said, I don't know what to do. I'm so embarrassed. I said, I have a key. I'll come over and lock it up. So that just, if you have a second key, make sure that you keep it available for emergencies like that.
And that's a good thing too, is if for some reason you choose to put that second key in a contractor's box, then remember that has to be in your listing agreement with the seller, that they've given you permission to also put a contractor's box on the property. Otherwise, you can't do that. So make sure you get that permission in writing on your listing agreement.
Right. And that does not replace your super key box, by the way. A lot of agents think that that's okay. That super key box gives you so much information of who has accessed the property. Yeah, you can do both, but do not just do the contractor box. I strongly suggest you don't do that. And if you do, like she said, make sure you get written permission. One of the other things that I used to do, and it's frowned upon now, is leaving your business card. A lot of agents do not want you, if they have a no sign-in sheet policy, they don't want that seller knowing you or who was in their house. They want to be the purveyor of the information, so to speak. So quite often they get angry if you leave a card. I still do sometimes, just because I'm a professional and I want them to know who's been in their home. But don't leave things like pads of paper with your logo on them. Don't take if there's a key assignment sheet, don't take their pen and leave yours with your logo on it. That infuriates listing agents, and it's just a bad business practice all the way around. So just make sure that you respect their boundaries and that this is their listing. You are just a buyer's agent in that situation. Also, same token with the cameras and the sound and audio. Make sure your clients don't talk badly about a property while you're in there. Don't make fun of things. Don't take pictures and post them on social media. I had to chastise an agent about that the other day. They took a picture of something that was really ugly. I mean, it was really ugly, but it's not their place to determine that and to blast it out to the rest of the world and make this person feel awful. You want to get a violation, there's a real good way to do it. By the same token, you can't take pictures in a listing unless you have permission of the listing agent who has permission from the seller. So if you're a buyer or you want to take pictures inside a listing, make sure you have permission before you do that, because that is against the rules. We are revisiting
What
that.
about FaceTime with our client? Because we're not capturing it or saving it.
That would be okay, I do believe, under the current rules, but make sure that no one's screenshotting that or doing something. We are revisiting that on MLS, the board of directors right now, about changing those, because there's so many people now that need you to take pictures of that and talk them through it as they're going through the property and what can and cannot be done with that media. So expect that rule to change in the near future, but right now, if you need to take photos while you're in a property, make sure you get their permission and be respectful. And don't do it. Don't take a picture to embarrass somebody. That's absolutely the wrong thing to do.
Could we, given that we're in this situation and FaceTiming and things like that, when listing the property, we could add that in the additional terms thing. Seller agrees to allow FaceTiming in the house or something like that, so that you're kind of getting a blanket clearance from the seller.
Absolutely.
And if it's in the listing agreement, then you've covered, you've done the CYA. Mm-hmm. And you can say to someone, we can FaceTime in here. However, they do not want still photos taken, or they're okay with still photos as well. Because again, some people go to open houses to see what they can thieve, and so they can walk in there and take pictures of somebody's dresser with a box on it. It looks like a jewelry box or something like that.
Or their mail.
So, but again, we're okay by putting that in the listing agreements, at least FaceTime or photography or something like that.
Absolutely. That, again, at a listing appointment, that's a very good discussion to have with your clients right now, is that this is prevalent right now. Everybody has a phone on their camera. I mean, either camera on their phone. Let me get that right. They don't even think about taking pictures or snapshots. I don't. I mean, you go somewhere and you just snap a picture. But you need to be very cautious of that if you're in someone else's home. They may not want that information out there. Yes, Teresa?
Do we need to get that in writing? Because I had to do I've got an out-of-town buyer, and they wanted me to do, it was an empty home, and I did ask permission from the listing agent if I could do a walkthrough video and send it to them, because they were having an issue with their grandchildren at that moment, so they couldn't do it live. And she gave me the permission, but should we have that in writing as well?
Even if it's a follow-up email or text, something that shows that you had that conversation. It's their responsibility, the listing agent, to have their client's permission. It's your responsibility as a buyer's agent to have that listing agent's permission. So make sure that you have something in writing that just guarantees that you had that conversation.
Okay, thank you.
Jody, you look like you have something to add.
No, that was perfect. Basically, I just send a follow-up email that says, per our conversation, you're allowing me to take still or video photos of 123 Sesame Street, and please confirm. And then they'll usually click on the email, got it, or something, and then you put that in your file and you're good to go.
Yeah. The other thing that I've noticed with agents now, with everything being such a digital experience versus the way we used to have to write everything out, is people are not taking any contract file notes. They aren't noting who they speak to, when they speak to them, what the outcome of that was. They really aren't having some kind of a broker or a communication log. Whereas brokers, I know Jody's experienced it, Nancy has, and I have, when you go to defend somebody, if there's a complaint, the very first thing I'm going to ask for, can I see your notes? Can I see when you talked to this person, what you said, what happened? And you know how many times people say, I don't have one? 99% of the time. Yeah. And that is the one thing that you can do that is going to protect you in almost all circumstances, even with this picture thing. That's why I'm getting back to this. If you write in your notes, I had a conversation with listing agent Sarah on such and such date, asking if I had permission to take still photos in the property and give them to my clients. And she acknowledged that it was okay. Is that going to be enough to completely protect you? Probably not, but it shows intent. It shows that you did the right thing, and they're going to have to prove that you didn't at that point. So, you know, take notes, make sure that you have some kind of a log. A communication log is vital. And I can't stress that enough, how important that is to have that and how much it will help us help you if something goes south.
And when you take that note, date and timestamp it, because if something does go sideways, if you have a date and timestamp of that phone call or text you sent, that can then be referenced back to pulling the logs from the cell phone vendor if it got to be that deep of a lawsuit to show, yes, here's this phone called that phone, or here's the text message, because they have all that stuff. So that's that, you know, so date and timestamp, so you can get it not only on the date but the time of day it took place.
That's really important, Larry. Good point.
Yeah, you can screenshot your text messages and save them as files, which is good.
Right. And I do that. I don't do it with every single one. A lot of it, I'll just do a communication log. Obviously, I don't have that much business right now, so it's easy. But normally, I would just do. I would note some things that aren't critical, but anything that is could affect the contract terms or affect the outcome of a contract or some kind of vital negotiation or conversation, I will screenshot that and put it in my file. But I don't necessarily keep everyone. But I do have a log of when I did. So if I had to pull up the records from Verizon, I could get them.
Lisa, one more thing I was going to mention when you were talking about the FaceTiming and the photos and getting the permission and all of that. One other thing that we need to consider as professionals is it's not always possible to know the motives of our clients, but we want to do our very best to screen them as good as we can. And part of that would be having a pre-qualification will help to know whether these people are legit or not, because you don't want to be giving pictures and videos to people that may have bad intentions, you know, with finding out what's in the home or whatever. So
valuables. Yeah, and I never would send information to somebody unless you've had a buyer consultation, either through Zoom or in person, that you've gotten a pre-qualification, that you find out kind of a little bit about them, where they live, that kind of stuff, and then you may send them information. But it's really irresponsible to send them anything without having that basic information at your disposal.
Really want to screen our clients.
Yeah. The other thing, you know, present a professional appearance at all times. I'm not talking about, you know, always suit and tie or, you know, dress and hose, that kind of stuff. But whatever you need to dress for the occasion. If you're showing land, then you dress for that. If you're showing upper end properties, you dress for that. If you're meeting in the office, you dress for that. But whatever you are, be clean and neat and pressed and look like you're a professional. They don't care that, you know, that you've been running around with your kids all day or whatever. They want you to, when you meet with them, to be the professional. So take a little bit of time to do that. And find out what their style is. I used to sell a lot of ranch land, and Jody and I used to laugh about that because I call it kicking rocks. Literally, 90% of our meeting would be standing outside a truck, literally scuffing your foot in the dirt and negotiating things verbally. And then 5% of it would be writing it down and then getting a deal done. But most of it was literally crap. I mean, literally just, not crap, but, you know, just discussion. It wasn't what most people would consider important time, but to them it was, because that's how they did business. And I got more business just on the hood of a truck out in Marana. I got a $12 million deal off the hood of a truck out there. So just always be aware of what your client's comfort zone is. If I'd asked them to come into the office and sit down behind a desk and have a buyer consultation, I would have lost that client. So just, be aware of what they want and what works for them.
So cowboy boots and jeans.
How many years did you see me in those when I was working those $1 million deals? Yeah. And, you look at, I remember I took our and this is kind of an aside, but Jody will know, our manager, Rick, back in the day. This was probably late 90s, maybe? I'm trying to think. Very kind of a fussy guy. He'd never really been out in the dirt much. And I took him out to see my client's property in Marana. And he was driving through it going, gosh, this is nothing. This, looking at the properties that were $1 million properties, horses, one of my clients had probably 25 horses that were worth an average of about $20,000 each, just roaming their pastures. And he's looking around going, I don't even know, can these people even afford to buy a trailer? I mean, he was very, very negative about it. And we got back to the office. I said, any one of those people could buy and sell you 5 times over. And you didn't appreciate the value of what they have because you don't know what the value is. So don't judge people and don't, assume that your clients have the same taste and values and experience that you do. And make sure that you tailor everything to them.
Well, and don't overwhelm them with the dress. Don't updress them. For example, back in the day, we had 2 agents. They had the same name. They were both referred to a client. They both showed up, and one had a suit with a vest and a tie at a $120,000 home where the guy was in sweats and a holy t-shirt, and the other guy just had nice khakis and a golf shirt on. And that was the decision maker. The seller told me that was the decision maker right there. Is that guy thought he was too good for me because of his suit and his tie. So know where you're going and know what that person is and dress for success for that appointment.
Mm-hmm. And again, we don't know what their hot buttons are and what they find appropriate. So just, but be considerate of where you're going. Another thing is when you're showing an occupied home, make sure you ring the doorbell. Even if you have an appointment, if you've got the key box, make sure that you ring the doorbell, that you announce yourself, open that door and say, your name, the company, anybody home. I had an appointment once. I walked into somebody in the shower. I literally just gotten the phone, clear to go. We opened the door, walk in, I announced myself, did all that, and there's still somebody in the shower. So even at that point, things can happen, but you're going to be less surprised and be less likely to get shot or something of that ilk if you announce yourself when you enter the property. It just allows people to at least gather themselves. Another thing, clean your car. How many times have you gotten into a car and there's debris on the floor, there's loose papers, there's things flying? It makes you look disorganized and unable to control your paperwork. If you've got papers floating all over your car, take a few moments and clean it out. I had 4 small children. Keeping my car clean was difficult, but I always made sure before I had a client in there that I cleaned it out and made sure that it looked like a mom didn't live in there.
Well, when we go back to the announce yourself in a vacant house these days, it's really good to announce yourself so that the squatters or homeless people or somebody else showing, whatever it is, but if there's somebody else in that house, you want to give them an opportunity to get out.
Yeah. Good point. Good point. One other thing I wanted to touch on, if an agent is showing a property, wait your turn. Do not go into a property another agent is in. Kindly wait your turn. Let them put the keys back in the key box, and then access it and go in. By the same token, if you're in a property, I suggest locking the front door behind you, making sure that no one else can access that property while you're in there for both your safety and your privacy. And then do not hand a key over to the other agent. Put it back in the key box. Let them access it that way. Otherwise, you're liable for anything that they do and what happens to that property until somebody else signs into it. So I forgot about that. Thanks for cueing my memory, Jody.
On my list.
Another thing is make sure that you direct questions. Robin, you had a question?
I just want to say, I feel like with the market as crazy it is, new listings are coming on and we're making appointments to go see. So I had one, I met, I've made the appointment. I talked to the listing agent. It's in showing time. No one says anything to me. And one of them I got there and there was no key box, no sign, no key box. And, and I'm on the phone, like trying to figure out, and they're like, oh, well, the door's open, go in. So I did, and I'm like, hello, hello. And sure enough, the door's open. So I showed my clients because they'd been waiting. But then there's another group right behind me. And like Big Dan taught me to lock the door when we're in there. So then I'm like stopping people at the door when they come. But then the next group's going in. So then I called the agent again, like, I want to let you know I'm done. I'm leaving the property. Another group has just entered, because I just felt like it was so crazy. And then it's my responsibility, but this house is wide open.
Right, and that agent put that seller in jeopardy. So, and that's a situation where you may want to talk about that with your broker, and we can address it at that point, because that's not an ideal way to do business. If it's one of our agents, I definitely want to know. If it's another company, okay, then you have to hope that their broker will do the right thing. You should never do that to your client. That's not okay. The house should always be secured. You need to make sure that even if it's vacant, people can steal appliances or damage it. You need to make sure that that property is secured. That's your job. And don't put it in MLS saying that it's on key safe if you have not put that key box on. That's a huge violation.
And it says it's on the spigot.
Yeah, it's a big fine. One of the things I'm on standards committee. I think you're not on that one, though, right, Jody? On standards?
Not this year.
Not this year, yeah. So one of the things we do is we get the complaints about fines, failure to access a property, failure to give notice, all these things. Those fines are huge. They're like $1,000, and they can go all the way to removing your license. I mean, they can be very significant. So be cautious about that. Yes, Jody.
Hey, since we're talking about key boxes still,
Yeah.
A reminder to do not take the key out of the box and keep it until after recordation. So when you're getting ready to close and you're doing your final walkthrough, you may not take that key out and keep it unless you have written permission by the listing agent. So again, get that written permission before you do that action. And then if you do that action and you're holding the key until it records, do not give it to the buyers until after recordation. I mean, literally, we've had police officers kicking new buyers out of their almost houses where the agent has given it to the buyer. It didn't record. They're playing in the pool all weekend. They think the house is theirs. And the agent had given them the key and then just left town and to go on her vacation. So definitely do not do any of that. Keep the key in the key box until it records, or get permission to take it out, and do not give it to your client, because your clients will tell you, oh no, I won't go in there, but trust me, they're going in.
And they're not held by the same standards and rules that you're held by. So don't do it. Just don't. Deborah just put in the chat, our unplugged appliances. She had a deal that happened that was, I guess, I'm not going to share too much, but problematic from start to finish. Let me just put it that way. And one of the things that they did is prior to closing, they unplugged the appliances and stuff. So it was a mess. It was not a good
Like the refrigerator?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So just be cautious about that. We've had other issues recently where the buyer's agent gave the keys to the buyer prior to closing, and they went in and started painting. They literally changed the property prior to recordation. If that deal did not record, the company's got some liability. The agent has significant liability, and the buyer is going to be out of pocket for some costs. But the agent could potentially lose their license for something like that. That's a pretty big violation. So be cautious about that.
Well, and as a listing agent, you should go into your properties and really watch them closely if they've been vacated right prior to closing, because that's when you find the buyers in there removing the carpet and taking out the ovens and stoves and putting their possessions in there. And
right, because they think
that happens.
It does happen.
Your broker.
Yeah, and not to this group necessarily. Like I said, the people in this group are not our problem children, so we appreciate all of you so much. It happens, and if you can help your peers learn from this, that's all we ask. Again, this goes back to be aware of deadlines. Make sure that you know those deadlines, that you don't tell them on day of recordation that they can have the keys at 8 a.m. It may not record till 5 p.m. So make sure that they know that that entire day is available for that. Utilities are a big issue. Make sure the seller knows that they can turn the utilities off on day of closing, but make sure that it's all going to close, or that everybody's done their walkthroughs and things like that. Otherwise, there may be a problem with that. Same with your buyers. I had a call over, what was our last holiday? Labor Day? Was that the last one? Yeah. Sorry, all my months have blurred together. Get a call from an irate customer on Monday, Labor Day, saying she closed on Friday. She's trying to move in over the weekend, and the appliances, nothing works, the utilities are off, and she wants to know who's going to pay for her hotel room. And I said, well, no one. You're welcome to get one if you'd like, but it's not the seller's responsibility to carry those utilities through the holiday weekend for you. You should have arranged to have them turned on Friday when you recorded on the property. And she was irate. She said, no one told me. Her agent said that they'd probably stay on. Again, if you expect those utilities to stay on, have that conversation with the listing agent, who's probably going to laugh at you. But at least have the conversation. It's absolutely the buyer's responsibility to get the utilities in. It's no one else's responsibility for that. And in that situation, a lender even got involved and was bad-mouthing the listing agent to the buyer's agent and to the buyer, saying that they were irresponsible, they shouldn't have done it. So then I had to get involved with the lender and say, hey, cease and desist. The seller is correct, not our buyer. So again, communication is key. Set those expectations up front. Give them a list of the utilities to contact and the dates to do that, and alleviate a problem up front. It really will stand you in good stead.
Yeah, as a buyer's agent, it's your responsibility to let the buyer know what they need to be doing. And so that's a great touch. The week prior to closing, everything's going great. You let that buyer know, here's all your utilities. You need to make the calls this week and get them into your name on the close of escrow date.
Right. And by the same token, on the reverse with the sellers, don't assume the buyer is going to put those in their name. You could end up paying for that utility indefinitely until somebody else does. So as a seller, I always recommend that they do it the day after recordation, just as a courtesy. And sometimes they quibble about that because when it's 110 degrees out, that utility bill could be substantial. But for the extra $20 it's going to cost them, be courteous and maybe do that at the next business day, because you don't know what time the utility company is going to get out there. It could be anytime between 7 a.m. and 5 p.m. And if they shut that electric off at 7 a.m. and it doesn't record until 5 p.m., there could be things that go wrong during the day. I don't think, usually it's not a problem, but just be aware of that. What else? Don't allow your buyers to enter a property unaccompanied. Don't ever open a door and leave it. You're responsible for the integrity of our key box system. You can't let inspectors stay by themselves. You can't let buyers stay by themselves. You need to be there present. A licensed realtor needs to be present the entire time a property is open. And if you have an emergency, call one of us, call a peer. Things happen sometimes. You may get when your kids was in an accident, you have to leave, but you cannot leave that property unattended. You have to arrange for somebody to take over for you at that point, or you need to escort their person out and lock that house up. Even if it's an inspection, you need to stop right then and close that property up properly. That's another violation that we see all the time in standards committee. Because in Phoenix, apparently it's different. And inspectors are allowed in properties without the agent present, but because their MLS allows inspectors to have a key box. They're not just people off the street. They are considered MLS affiliate members. We don't allow that here for the safety of our clients, basically. So just because a rule is effective in one area does not mean it's effective throughout the entire state. So be aware of that. What else? Don't eat, drink, smoke use the bathroom without permission. There are times when your client has to use the bathroom. It's not something that they can wait. If that is the situation, please make sure the water's turned on. Don't leave a mess for the seller to find, and be respectful of your client. I did have that happen once, showing a vacant property, a client who'd been ill and went in to use the restroom. The water wasn't on. It was a mess. We ended up going to Circle K, buying gallons of water so we could flush the toilet so that the seller doesn't come home to a surprise. If that happens, fix the problem. Don't leave it for the listing agent to find. Just again, it's unpleasant, but it's a part of doing our job. And don't make your client feel bad. That's not, they can't help it. Weather, we don't have a lot of weather related issues here, but if it's raining, the three days a year it rains, don't walk into the property, shake your umbrella in their lobby. Make sure you're respectful of that. Same with mud, dirt, debris, cactus. Don't track it through someone's house. If they have pets and there's pet waste in the yard, be careful not to track that in the property, because I've seen that happen before. It's super ugly to have to clean up.
Yeah, you don't want it in your car either.
No, but yeah. And I don't understand how people are oblivious to that. If you've walked through it, it's pretty apparent, but they act like it never happened, and they just keep traipsing through the house and then into your car. So again, if you see it, address it immediately. I know it's icky and not something you want to talk about, but it happens. Let's see. That was pretty much respect. We talked about property in public. Let's talk about respect for your peers. Well, first of all, does anybody need a break, or are you guys good? We've got about another hour. Do you just need a break before we continue? Everybody good? I mean, obviously you're on Zoom, you can take a break, but yeah, and this may not go a whole nother hour. So if you're good to go, do you want to continue on? Okay, all right. So respect for your peers. Always identify yourself as a realtor. Make sure you identify your full name, your company name, whether or not you're licensed. That's something in any interaction you have with another agent or the public you need to do. It's a rule and it's a requirement, but most people don't always do that. They'll say, "Hi, I'm Lisa with Keller." That doesn't mean anything to a lot of people. Make sure you identify yourself fully and what your role is and what you're calling them about. And it just goes a long way to help out. Plus, it's the right thing to do. Make sure that you, again, we talked about this, respond to other agents courteously, professionally, quickly, timely. I don't know what else to say about that. We pretty much addressed that. Anybody have anything else they want to add to that?
Nicely.
Nicely, yeah, nicely goes a long way. Yeah. And if you're angry about something, there are times when agents have made me so angry that I literally feel like I'm going to lose my mind. Take a moment. It's okay to say, "I need a minute to process this. Can I call you back in 10 minutes? Can I call you back in 30 minutes? Step away from that situation. It's going to escalate. And it's hard to think clearly when you're in a moment like that. So step away, call one of the brokers if you need to, take a moment, gather yourself, realize that this is not a war. This is real estate. This is not life or death. No one's going to die if something goes south. Take a moment and just realize the end goal is to make the buyer and seller happy. What you think is irrelevant. So don't take yourself too seriously and back off. Again, one of our jobs as brokers is to de-escalate situations. If you call me and you're freaking out and you're frantic, I'm going to try to de-escalate you, and then I'm going to call the other agent and try to de-escalate them before it gets past that point. Usually it's just something somebody said that irritated the other party, and they're misinterpreting the intent, and things can go bad very quickly in that situation, especially if you're already angry or if you have a chip on your shoulder. We see that a lot. You've had a bad experience with a particular agent. You go into a transaction assuming it's going to be bad. Guess what? It will. Self-fulfilling prophecy. If you expect it to be bad, it will be. If you expect it to be good, it probably will be good. So take a moment and get off your high horse and just do your job. It's not about you. It's about the client. I know it sounds harsh, but unfortunately, that's the reality. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. I was, what you were bringing out is really important. It is about the buyer and the seller. And so no matter how bad the agent might need the paycheck, it doesn't matter. You know, if things happen, we have to put the client's needs first. And maybe sometimes it's better for the client if the transaction goes no farther. So.
Robin, did you have something you wanted to add?
Sorry, I was waving at my mom who just
Oh.
walked in.
Hi, Mom. Yeah, we have that. We had a situation in our office a week or so ago where the client did not want to list the property. The agent would not leave the property until the client listed it. They sat there and they refused to leave the property until the client signed. You can't do that, folks. And his excuse was that, well, the client needs to sell this property in order to move on to get the other thing she needs to retire and to get on with her life. She's an old lady. She's younger than me. But anyway, that's irrelevant. It's not his choice to make that her choice. She said, leave my home. I don't want to list. You cannot hold a client hostage. So be courteous. If they want to list a property, they will. A lot of times people don't want to tell you they don't want you to be their listing agent or their buyer's agent. They're trying to cushion it a little bit. So they're softening it with like, yeah, this isn't a good time, maybe later, but they really want you to leave. Take the hint. Don't badger them. You can't force someone to do something they don't want to do in real estate. Even legally, I know Jody's had this, I know I've had this, sellers refusing to sign at the last minute. No judge in the land is probably going to force that person to leave their property. The buyer may be able to get some damages, but they're probably not going to force that seller to sell their property. So again, communication is key. Make sure that if you have a bad feeling going in, it's probably not going to get better. So take a moment, realize, do I really want to work with this person or not? You can always refer them to an agent you hate and go from there. No, I'm kidding. But, you don't, everybody's got different personality styles and they may like me and not like Nancy or vice versa. It doesn't matter what, you just never know. So you can't force somebody. If somebody says leave, make sure you leave. Same thing with agents. If another call we had the other day was a property was listed with another company. Our agent had been mailing that particular client for 9 years. The client obviously chose another agent to list their property. Our agent was upset and started badgering that seller about why they didn't list with her. You don't get to do that. It's already listed with another company. You need to stop. You need to step back and realize that obviously it wasn't a good fit. But you can't call that client repeatedly and badger them about why they didn't list with you. It's not fair to the other agent. It's not fair to the client. So step down and back away. Another thing that we learned in risk management yesterday, as a matter of fact, was about the do not call list and how when you can contact people. If you haven't had a contact with somebody for 3 months and they're on the do not call list, you can't contact them. That right ends at that 3-month mark. So even if you've been mailing them, say you've contacted them 6 months ago, if they're on the do not call list and it's been more than 3 months, you cannot contact them without their written permission. So be aware of that as well.
I like that example about the open house where you had an open house and they filled out your open house registry and they gave you their phone number. The attorney stated that don't wait till after 3 months to call those people back. As long as you have a running conversation with them every 3 months or less, then you can continue to call them if they tell you it's okay, or if they haven't said, don't call me anymore. That was a really interesting conversation. I enjoyed that.
Well, we're going to go into that in more
clients.
Yes.
And what was the past client? Was it 18 months?
No. I don't have my notes in front of me. I believe it was 6 months or 9 months. It wasn't very long. It wasn't that long.
I know. I didn't write that down on my
notes. I'm going to be doing a broker letter. I'll probably get Nancy and Jody's input on that as well. about the do not call. That's a whole nother class, so we're not going to get into that, but there's a lot of litigation and things happening with that you all need to be aware of. So we'll address that in a different class. That could actually be a whole class in itself.
Yeah, and your E&O insurance may not cover that.
Yeah.
Most
So
likely.
we'll get into, yeah. Back to respect for our peers. If you are pulling up a listing and you notice that there's an error on their listing, call them up. Don't report it to MLS. Call that agent and say, you know what, I noticed that you've got the subdivision name wrong, or you've got the zip code wrong, or you've got the square footage wrong, or you have something in here that's incorrect, or you've put something in here that's not supposed to be in here, like a gate code. Call an agent first. Give them a chance to correct that before you escalate that to MLS. That's a courtesy, a peer-to-peer courtesy. You would hope they would do the same to you. It's another way to build your camaraderie with other agents that you may not have spoken with. They're going to remember that. They're going to remember that if you have a deal together, that you took the time to help them versus just reporting them to the board. So take a few moments on that.
If they start arguing with you,
Hang up and report them.
because yeah, if they're going to start arguing with you, then you're going to lose.
Mhm. Yeah.
So don't, if they don't want your help, then you don't need to offer it, and just report it, and then the other parties can deal with it.
Right. Yeah. Another thing is if you're holding an open house for another agent within our brokerage, again, don't leave your marketing materials out. Take yours with you. Make sure that theirs are prominently displayed when you leave. If you don't try to prospect other agents, clients, obviously that's a violation, but it happens quite often. If you're calling expireds, make sure that you don't talk badly about the prior agent or company. You don't know the situation there. It could have been just a conflict of personality or something. It doesn't mean that the property wasn't priced properly. It doesn't mean that there was something wrong with what that agent did or didn't do to sell the property. So, be courteous. Talk about your merits, not what somebody else could or could have done. Let's see, what else? I guess, your reputation, guard your reputation. It's all you've got in this business, your reputation and your integrity. And if you lose that, it's very difficult to get back. Tucson's a very small town still when it comes to real estate. And you need to make sure that you guard your reputation. Make sure you treat others with respect. What else? Anybody else have anything?
Social media can actually kill you and your business very, very quickly. If you have had issues and somebody posts that, people will spread bad information quickly, way more than great information.
Mm-hmm.
So you definitely need to go out and get testimonials to your reputation and how great you're doing, because one bad one can really clobber it. So be nice to others, play nice, and just do the right thing always, and it will come back and give you a lot of gifts in your future.
The other thing, don't blast. I think this is kind of touching on what you just said. Don't blast other people, other agents or situations on like Tucson Realtor Resource or on our page. There was one a few weeks ago that was wrong. It was erroneous. I was involved in that situation. But of course, I couldn't tell the truth on social media because that's not the platform for that. But this was a situation where an agent had disparaged one of our agents about something that was handled, they thought improperly, but it wasn't handled the way that it was portrayed on social media at all, not even close. And it was a thread that probably had over 150 comments. I mean, it was major, but I could not go on there and say anything other than I said, remember there's two sides to every story, and don't and make sure that you have all the facts before you make a decision about something. And I still got slammed for saying that, but I couldn't tell the truth. I couldn't go back and say, that this agent had posted something that was incorrect. Because that's not my place as a broker. So just be really cautious and courteous about what you do post. Find out the facts. I mean, that's what happens now. People get angry, they get upset. Their first instinct is to blast it to everybody about how wrong they were, how everybody wronged them, without actually finding out what happened. And because it makes a much better story if you're wrong than if you just made a mistake, right? Yeah, it's not as impactful. this person got all kinds of gratification that wasn't necessary. Yeah. Teresa, you had something to add?
Yeah, I had experience. It was I went to show an investor condominium, and there was nothing in the agent remarks. And I looked up the property, did the verification, the legal, name, description. Anyway, when we pull up, there's no apartment number as referenced in the MLS. So I called the agent. I'm like, I'm sorry, I've walked around this building twice. I cannot find this apartment. It's like, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's 222 or something like that. I'm like, okay, I guess you're missing a 2, but then how's the property verification? The legal description. I checked it with the county records, and it still shows 22, not 222. Yeah, I'm aware of that. I said, well, okay, well, it should have been in the agent remarks. He's like, oh, I thought it was. I'm like, okay, well, no problem. Well, there was no 222. So I'm here with the investor, and I'm looking for 222. No, I call the guy back, and of course it goes to voicemail, because I also have issues. No agent ever answers their phone. They want to listen to their voicemail, and then if they decide to call you, they will. So anyway, he calls me back. I'm like, I'm sorry, there's no 222 either. He's like, oh, did I say 222? I meant 204. At this moment, it's hot, and I'm just, like, oh, I walked past that one 3 times now. Okay, I know where that one's at. Thank you. And I could have been frustrated with him, but I wasn't. And I'm just like, well, that's okay. And he did text me later and said, I'm so sorry. I said, that's all right. No, everyone has those days. And I just laughed about it and tried to get my client to laugh about it. Like, well, we're trying to find a non-existent room, but here it is. And I don't know. Yes, he should have done some things, but we're all human. So, and it was a little frustrating, but I didn't let my client know that, and I also didn't yell at him. I'm just like, that's okay.
Yeah.
No big deal. Just update it in the MLS would be nice. That's all.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes if I'm showing properties that are in an area I'm unfamiliar with, I may go preview them. Only because of that situation. If it's something you're very familiar with, you're going to be able to figure that out. But especially like downtown, I've showed some stuff down there, and I'm not as familiar with some of the addresses and stuff. I'll go drive by and I'll try to find it ahead of time, because the last thing you want to do is drag your client around to properties you can't find. Makes you look like you don't know your job, even though it wasn't your responsibility.
Yeah, normally I do that, and also I'm taking him to see some tomorrow, but I'm going to go look at all of them today and be familiar. I had a very short notice. He wanted us to see this, and I'm like,
I wasn't telling you how to do your job. I'm just saying sometimes that's what I would do. Yeah.
Yes, and that's excellent, because especially in that situation, I would have already knew all that. It's head it off before it's an issue.
Well, one thing that we used to do, that Jody and I used to do in the past is, and that was when we had actually some inventory, so it's different, is we preview everything in our known area. And like Northwest Tucson was where we worked primarily. We knew every property that was on the market. So if somebody did call, or you were showing them and they're saying, well, I'd really rather have this, you knew instantly that there are 4 houses that would meet that criteria that you didn't pull up, and you could go show them. And so it's good to, and this, again, that doesn't apply right now. There's no inventory, so it doesn't really matter. But if you can still go preview, I still go, even though as a broker, I still go preview properties. I need to know, I need to have a pulse of the market. I need to know what's happening out there, how things are being priced, what agents are saying are accurate. And I still go preview property all the time. It's part of our job. We need to be aware of that. And if you don't know an area, refer to an agent that does. If you don't work like Vail, if you live in the Far Northwest, maybe refer to an agent in Vail that is familiar with that area. Not to say you can't be familiar with everything, but it may be that you're not serving your client best if you show them property or sell them property in an area that you're not an expert. Robin?
Talking about price brings up a question. So when you see in the agent only remarks range pricing, 210 to 235, but yet all the public facing things my client's looking at say 210. How am I presenting that to my client?
Well, it's a marketing strategy all it is a marketing strategy. It's a seller's choice of how they want to market the property, and an agent's, this is going to sound again harsh, but I think a lot of times it's a weak agent that allows that to happen because they aren't really able to help their client determine a true price. I have used range pricing in some situations where there isn't a clear and definitive price point that it should be listed at. In that situation, you just let them know when you're at your listing presentation or at your buyer consultation that we will come across range price properties. They show up at the bottom of the range. I would not take the range into consideration when making my offer. You'll say you'll make your offer based on your comps and your investigation, and that's just that's a starting point that the seller's asking. How would somebody else handle that?
Well, remember, it can't just be in agent-only remarks. It must be in the public remarks, right in the title of the public remarks. I think it's it's the first line.
The first line, and I didn't catch that. You're right.
Yeah, and it has to say, property range price between this and this. And so that would be a violation in MLS if it was just in the agent-only remarks, because it must be in the public remarks.
Mm-hmm.
Good to know. Okay, because the client's like, well, that's not what I see. What are you even talking about?
Yeah. So that would be that nice conversation Lisa was talking about of calling the agent and just reminding them, oh, by the way, I saw it in your agent remarks, but it does need to be in the public remarks. And if they say, oh, no, it doesn't, I can do whatever I want, then you just say, okay, thank you very much. And then you hang up and then you click the report violation button on that listing and just say range price not in public remarks, and leave it at that and let it go.
Let Andrew handle it in MLS. Exactly. Yeah.
Thank you.
But quite often, most agents want to do the right thing. Again, when it's a pricing issue or something like that, that's your job as a buyer's agent to consult with your client, let them know that you are their professional and that you will help them determine the best price for that property. Remember, if it's dual agency, there's other rules that apply. Certain things you can and cannot disclose, but most of the time you're going to be fine. Allowing them to helping them come up with a price that's acceptable to them. Let's see. So we've talked about this class was about gaining client trust in order to get more referral business from those clients in the future. We've kind of gotten off that a little bit into more agent professionalism, but all of that goes back into gaining clients' trust. The more professional you are, the better you'll be able to serve your clients. We've pretty much covered everything I wanted to cover. Do you have any questions or concerns or anything else you guys want to talk about? Otherwise, we can finish up a little bit early.
I think it's just important for everyone to know that the better communication you have with your client, the more they're going to love you and refer you in the future.
Right.
The better you handhold, the better you walk them through everything, the more that you have anticipated their needs and told them what they need to know before they have to call you. So you should have a system in place. And let me tell you, some people are anal and they're going to get there before you do, kind of thing. But if you can just, like the utility thing, you send out a note after the Binzer period has been negotiated. And you say, okay, our next step, I want to let you know that a week prior, you're going to call the utility companies and you're going to do this. And, I've got one client right now and they are very high Ds. They're very direct. They're very dominant and they want that handheld. And I'm contacting them every day. And I'm either sending a text or an email or I'm picking up the phone. And I'm letting them know where we are in the process of closing their property. So basically, I'm sending an LSU when I get one, which we usually don't send to our client. But like, hey, the LSU has been updated, loan status update, and here's what it looks like, and this is what it means. And then I'll send them the utility thing one day, and then I'll just text them one day and say, all's going well. I'm keeping an eye on everything. I'll text the next day. I'll say I've talked to the lender and the lender's confirmed the appraisal's been ordered. We should get a call soon. And I'm just logging that every day so that, because they're staying in town, and I want that next piece of business. I've got clients that I've actually done. My record is 12 deals with one client and their immediate family.
That's excellent.
And that's the business you guys want. When somebody picks up the phone and says, "Hey, Jody, remember me? It's been 7 years." And I'm like, wow. And I can honestly tell you, I haven't contacted them every month for 7 years, maybe once every 2 years.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm right on top of them, but they remember, and they'll even go, "Are you still in real estate?" And I'm like, "Absolutely." And then we'll come over and list my house. Those are the calls you want. That's the statement you want to hear. Then you're not competing with anyone. You're filling out paperwork and you're listing their house, and they've put their faith and trust in you once again.
All good information. And we discussed that. I think before you got on the call, we'd gone into the communication quite in depth. And I think that is the most vital piece of the puzzle. It really is communication with your client. So just to recap again, we talked about communication, listening is more important than talking, respect, standing up for your beliefs, making sure that you don't allow your clients to bully you or to talk you into doing some business practice that you're not proud of or legally allowed to do, writing clean contracts, knowing financing that's available in this market, never disparaging or talking badly about other agents, basically providing expertise. And that is the key to getting more referrals. And with that, I think we're going to end it a little bit early. Thank you all so much for joining me. As I said earlier, the people on this call are already very professional, and I appreciate all of you. You all do a fantastic job. And if you can help your peers learn a little bit of this, go a long way. So I truly appreciate all of you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, invite your friends.
Yeah, like I did.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Lisa.
You're welcome.